We're going to look at strategy today. Some things to keep in mind when you finally get to pilot the son of Zeus here. This vid will act as a reintroduction to Lars. I'll mention this again in videos to come, but he can do some different things now. Like, in a way, he is so different. We'll start with an addendum, as I missed a few things about this Lars guy in the last vid. Inductance on counter hit and pressing down shifts to dynamic entry, double barrel, and the enemy cannot escape. It is guaranteed. So naturally, I wondered what else is guaranteed if you elect not to go into heat state. I mean, you can get the same hit with double barrel even in heat exhaustion. But if you don't shift into dynamic entry at all, what else is guaranteed? Left-right combo makes the cut. So too does ring curve to force a mix-up here. Getting greedy, unfortunately, Death Mask, Down Forward 1 or Alert L, Flash Bullet, and things like Blue Bolt won't come. But you can get off a junk punch, after which throwing out Power Spike to fish for that counter hit launcher might not be a bad idea. Glass Breaker without going into limited entry does some pretty good damage. However, I think you sacrifice frames by not going into limited, which doing so sacrifices damage. I'll probably mention this again in another video, but unlike Tekken 7, Tekken 8, even in this current state, is very informative on the lay of the land. For instance, in my last video, I really didn't cover Heat Smash in terms of its plus frames on block, but look here. The game literally tells us. So when it comes to picking a character in Tekken 8, if they are a counter hit character, pressure character, or mix-up, the game seems on track in telling you so. All that being said, on block, keep your Heat Smash mix-ups in mind. Automatically going into dynamic entry, there are enough plus frames to get rimfire on counter hit, which may strike caution enough in the opponent to open up the door to stun, or a double barrel wall split. Real mix-ups. Thank you to everyone in the comment section for pointing out new info, which inspired this addendum portion of the video. I just want all of us to have the best info and weaponry available when the curtain falls on Tekken 8. And with that said, I get to mention my new favorite, Flash Bullet, and some things that were pointed out to me. After Flash Bullet on counter hit and holding back, it is still possible to get additional licks in, as follows: Power Slam, Surge Blast, Electric Jolt. And you can make more pressure out of this if you heat dash it. Getting this to hit might be a little tricky though, as a micro mini move forward input may give you double action instead, which also combos. But hey, damage is damage, right? Impulse Plus into shift to silent entry, setting up ground game. Outpost Blitz to silent entry for some more ground game fun as well. And if heat is active, you can combo into Rebellion for additional mix-up powers. Like caramel and ice cream, nothing but dopeness on top of more dopeness. Let's revisit some old friends. As how could I forget that the second hit of Multiplied Force no longer counter hit launches, but knocks down instead. I'll miss that one a lot. That one I didn't want to believe. Electric Volley no longer launches, but still wall splats on normal hit. Though the opponent flies off to Lars' left, and it can be a janky sort of splat. And Lightning Axle. This move no longer Hurricane Axle, and no longer tail spins, hence the name in its new animation, but gives a knockdown instead. Forces crouch on block, in chips, and it has to be plus. When the game releases, we will have a litany of things to go over. But for the sake of time and the fact that we don't have the game solidified in stone in terms of what's going to be what, we're going to look at one main type of strat path today, using lightning axle to do so, looking at it in a vacuum. That is to say, instead of going for wall splits, even if a wall is around, we're going for the lightning axle knockdown instead to set up some old friends to bring along some new weapons. Let's open the path. Whatever the combo is, knocking down an enemy with lightning axle, and for fear of follow-up, they decide to roll away, turbine hook will catch them. Now if they lay on the ground, thinking that the follow-up will be a high attack that whiffs, dynamic entry 2, rimfire, will have them thinking otherwise, and set them up to rethink things all over again. Another lane for Lars to travel in if the enemy decides not to initially move after lightning axle hits is dynamic entry into stomp, after which, if they attempt to hold back to stand up, silent entry, lightning thrust will not allow that to happen. Lightning axle is our main base in the strategy today. However, if you knock the enemy down though, and they opt to do absolutely nothing, I mean simply lay on the ground while you go make a sandwich or something, you, my friend, have the option to get all cozy. I mean, right up next to them, going from dynamic to silent to limited entry, rising force, as it hits grounded opponents. Asterisks, or at least I think so. Like Jin's right axe kick, Geyser in Kaz's Devil Steel Pedal. Yeah, I know we can see Harangue starting to get off the ground here, but I still think it hits ground. Above all else, rising force is advantageous here, that's for sure. Another scenario is Ops gets off the ground and through a split between hesitation and attempting to play the guessing game, fearing that attack coming, allows Lars to shift from dynamic entry to silent entry to limited entry, and now our crouching or standing opponent, because of their hesitation, is in the exact situation they're trying to avoid to begin with. This, in time, may prove to be impractical because it's Tekken. People press buttons. And this is supposed to be aggressive Tekken. Definitely supposed to press buttons. However, if you find yourself up against an opponent that wants to play the guessing game, let them play the guessing game, because they may end up guessing wrong. And no matter how you knock your opponent to the ground, let's say with Earth Battery here, initial advancement on opponents may prompt them, even in this high-octane offensive game, to think defensively. Another good time, if you notice this, to test out from Den to Sin to Lee, limited entry, and go into a safe chip-inducing rising force. Now, if this holding back pattern is established, they do it, you see it, no reason not to go for it again for a potential hit or more chip. And while we have the wrecking ball herself, Asuka here, with this particular matchup, Lars v Asuka, I'd say just as much as any other, the outcome is dependent on which player knows the proper tools for the job. This will shift things heavily in their favor. One issue Lars had in Tekken 7 was after hitting Asuka with Arc Combo, it was best if one wanted to keep their offense going to turn to double smack, because Asuka could and would more than likely parry every other option. But in this game, Shifting into limited entry, Rising Force, a super Shoryuken elbow blows up this plan. This is a great win for Lars in this instance of the matchup. You're going to want to try and use Bow Shock as much as possible against opponents getting off the ground, or just whenever for that matter, but especially trapped against the wall. It's plus frame city. I'll say it again. It's mid, homing, plus on block. And after Lightning Axle knocks an opponent down on the ground, your opponent can back roll, in which feigning an attack by going into dynamic to bait something out could be an option. At the same time, it closes distance for a dynamic entry Bow Shock before they have time to recollect their game plan, going into plus frames on block, or they just get hit. While we're on the subject of dynamic entry, you probably are chomping at the bit to go from Den stance to back Den stance. Just watch the range when throwing out Bow Shock to close the gap. Keep it in mind to avoid whiffing. And with going into Den, that brings me to Stomp. With a little bit of hesitation, you sighting it in your opponent, and your opponent wondering why you're not pressing, this does work. I was landing stack up on counter hit, but was late on the button, like every single time. So make sure you commit if you go for this. There will undoubtedly be multiple multiverse paths and setups in this game. It's early doors, but it seems to me Lars has a nasty ground game. Seems like a monster. It will be a bit of time before we get our hands on the game again. I will be here for the remaining duration of Tekken 7. Join the new wave as we move toward a new era in Tekken, and I will see you in Tekken 8. Laters.